And it's Tuesday evening. You're welcome to tonight's edition of Fact Sheet live on eTV, live on Facebook as well. We're excited to welcome you to the show tonight. As always, when we sit on Tuesday evenings, it's about our nation, Ghana. It's about the world. It's about how we can together formulate policies and programs and come to a consensus as to the way forward in building our nation. Tonight, we meet to discuss the facts, the data, and nothing but these very important, crucial elements when it comes to nation building. My name is Samuel Ishan, and I welcome you to the conversation. The focus is on World Freedom Day, climaxed yesterday. And tonight, that's where our focus is, because as a nation, we've been talking about the rights, freedoms enjoyed by practitioners of journalism and broadcasting in this country. Just a few weeks ago, there was a piece that was written by a renowned Ghanaian, Mr. Sam Jonah. A lot of criticisms, a lot of praise he's received. But in all, it brings us to the question about the theme for this year's World Press Freedom Day. The press, the publications, the writings, the videos, all, does it serve the public good? That's our focus tonight on Fact Sheet. We'll try to understand what broadcasting is all about. We'll try to understand the ethics of our business. We'll try to understand whether we've been able to utilize the relevance of the repeal of the criminal libel law, which gave us the freedoms to do what we do today without fear and looking over our shoulders. We'll talk about the Right to Information law, which avails companies and entities to the media for them to gather any content they are looking for. And then we will talk about content that is put on air. You remember the issue of the Kaswa incident and how we're told about how, some Malams and co have been putting content out there that people felt should not be. The shutdown of some TV stations, about 49 of them, just about last week or so. All these things are issues we'll discuss tonight on tonight's edition of Fact Sheet. My guests are here with me to help me interrogate the issue, and so I encourage you to stay with me and let your thoughts, your views, your comments be heard through our Facebook wall, which is eTVGhana. And you send the comments through in due time. I'll read them. Our WhatsApp line is 02022222067. You send them through and I'll read them. We'll take a short breather. When we come back, we will start the conversation on World Press Freedom Day, how far we've come as a nation. And you're welcome back. This is Fact Sheet live on eTVGhana. Tonight we are talking about press freedom, Ghana's journey so far. And to help me discuss the issue, I have Gloria Hiaji, who is the Executive Secretary for GEBA, and Muhib Said, who is Program Officer Freedom of Expression, Media Foundation for West Africa, and so would Mr. And you can come also join us. He's the editor for the Informer newspaper. They will help me to do justice to the issue. I'll go back to the theme for this year's celebration of World Press Freedom Day. And the theme for this year's own was information as a public good. Have we, as a nation, in terms of the freedoms we enjoy as media practitioners or broadcasters, the content, the information we churn out, has it done us good, especially from where we are coming from? I'll start with Gloria, who is in the studio with me, for us to understand what it means for broadcasters to have freedom to do their job. What does it mean?
Okay, so thank you and good evening to your viewers. For broadcasters to have freedom, I think this is translated in the ability to freely give out any information that is necessary for the public to be able to make decent decisions to help in the development of our country. If the broadcast industry is constrained in any way, not to give out all the information all the information that is necessary to help the public come to an informed position, it tends to affect democracy itself, because we need the public. In fact, in the end, the media is the amplification of the public voices. Okay, the media helps give voice to the voiceless. Because without broadcasting the way it's being practiced now, if the media were not available to provide the various platforms for people to be able to come out with their views and opinions and questions and any interrogations they had, it would impact negatively on our socio-cultural, socio-economic development as a nation. So yes, for the media to be free, then it means that we should be able to practice without any pressures or violence or threats to our lives as media practitioners.
All right, so as much as it's important, the content that is being put out there per your position as to what freedom necessarily means, does the vehicle, the vessel, putting that information out there not matter in determining what is content that the discerning listener must consume? In that respect, I'm talking about the quality, the caliber of people that we classify as either journalists, media practitioners, or broadcasters. Does it matter in the conversation?
I think it matters very much, because we need people who can properly judge or determine what is consumable material and what is not consumable material. Granted, we have laws in this country governing freedoms. The media in this country enjoys certain rights, okay? And basically that's a freedom to operate as media organizations. However, these same rights, these same freedoms that have been granted the media in the 1992 Constitution have some limitations put on them, which in a nutshell have to do with national security, public morality, and then the privacy of other people. So whoever is a journalist or whoever comes on air to practice their profession needs to be well, I don't want to use the word educated, but I guess that's the...
Trained.
Yeah, well trained, so that the person knows what can come on air and what shouldn't be said on air, the kind of language to be used, the kind of material that will not infringe on any of the limitations that have been put in there on the media. In fact, although it's put on the media, I think in the end it affects all of us, okay, so that we know where our limitations are. So yes, professionalism is key in the journalists, the media practitioners who are performing the role of informing and educating Ghanaians, so that we do not have a situation of misinformation or disinformation, because that would then end up causing more harm than good.
So in that respect, coming back to the theme for this year's celebration of World Press Freedom Day, information as a public good, seeing where we are coming from at a time when you could not even publish any stories that had to do with the government and the consequences thereof that awaited you as a journalist if you wrote anything untoward about a government in power, and the fact that the criminal libel law was repealed, and now we enjoy the freedoms we enjoy today. The content we have been putting out there, has it over the years done the citizenry good in terms of keeping governments in check, in terms of educating people, in terms of informing people? Have we done that?
I should think that to a large extent we have been able to achieve that, because the journalistic profession, the media profession is guided by certain rules and regulations, certain guidelines put out by the National Media Commission. And I know that the GJ, that's the Ghana Journalists Association, also has its code of ethics, and GEBA also has its code of conduct. So all these guidelines and codes help to shape the way journalism is, the journalistic profession is supposed to be practiced. So yes, we've come a long way in this country, and I believe that part of our development, part of our growth as a nation has been premised on, on the contribution of the public to the discourse. Okay, because in the situation where they have the opportunity to call in or maybe even use a social media sites to express their views, more or less we've noticed a situation where government listens, government takes note of all the concerns or some of the concerns that come in and try to mold their actions in a way that would benefit the general good.
All right, let me hit the phone lines and speak to Said and find out from him as well. The earlier questions I asked Gloria, what constitutes freedom? The issue about who carries the message to the people. Because as much as there isn't any censorship per se, the vehicle that is carrying that information is also critical, because we know in our practice there's the element of selectivity, there's the element of subjectivity as to where the person is coming from, his belief system, the ideals he or she subscribes to. All these influence, sometimes even editorial policy. So let me find out from Said what he classifies as freedom and whether as media practitioners we are enjoying those freedoms. Said, good evening.
Good evening.
I trust you're doing well.
Yes, I am.
All right, so I asked the question, freedom for us as media practitioners. From your view, what constitutes freedom for you to practice your profession?
Well, I think in the first place, freedom would be judged on the basis of the legal framework for the exercise of the journalistic profession. And in that regard, I think that Ghana has very liberal laws governing the media space. We have decriminalized libel, as you mentioned earlier. The Constitution also guarantees press freedom and media independence. The Constitution also makes it clear that there shall be no censorship in Ghana. And last but not least, we have also adopted the Right to Information law, which gives citizens and the media the legal basis to request for public interest information. And to a very large extent, government has kept away from meddling with the work of the media. And so I would say that from the perspective of the law, there is media freedom in Ghana. And as far as the evidence on the ground is concerned, we have largely operated our media in freedom and independence.
But who is a media practitioner? That's a very relevant question when it comes to enjoying our freedom. Who is a media practitioner in your view?
Unfortunately, we in Ghana have not really been very rigid as far as defining who a media practitioner is. And therefore, whoever finds himself behind a console, whoever is a columnist in a newspaper, and whoever gets the opportunity to be even invited to be a regular guest on a TV or radio program, somebody who was picked by a media house to present music, all of us kind of metamorphosed into journalists and media practitioners. Otherwise, I should say that a media practitioner should be one whose livelihood is from media practice. And media practice here meaning that the person actually processes and also disseminates information.
Now,
News and information here.
All right, so if you are raising virtually concerns about the transition of, let's say, DJs suddenly becoming journalists, then it brings to mind or to the fore the question about the quality of work we do as journalists or broadcasters in this country. Because I'm thinking about journalists who are expected to be investigative, journalists who are supposed to uncover and expose corruption in the country. The quality of journalists in this country today, are they able to perform these tasks? Said?
I wouldn't say that we've been able to perform this task as much as we should. If you look at the number of media organizations that we have as against impact, I would say that we have a long way to go. The successes and the positives that we can point to have always come from a very limited number of media practitioners and media organizations, and the rest of the media have virtually virtually ridden on the back of the good works and the impactful stories and productions of the few very good ones to stay relevant and to also bask in the glory that we all, the glory that the media is doing well and promoting the public good.
So if one of our core mandates is to keep government institutions of state accountable, and per your own submission, there are just a few people we can point to as a nation as these being, investigative journalists in the country. It should be a matter of concern to us, shouldn't it?
Of course, it is a matter of concern, because the Media Foundation for West Africa, for example, has a project where we fund journalists to produce investigative pieces and other media content that we expect to make impact. And sometimes we end the year with a lot of the money still sitting in the coffers because we did not get journalists responding appropriately to our calls. Besides, we have so many of the media outlets, especially radio, being owned by politicians who, rather than help hold government to account, rather fight against citizens demanding accountability by producing counter narratives that support the government, denies obvious truths about what the government has done, and if they are in opposition, also refusing to acknowledge what perhaps they have done wrong, and also spew propaganda. And so it's made it very difficult for the media to distinguish itself, because so many of the media organizations are politically owned and are not committed to promoting the public good.
Now, let me ask a question about the point you made about funding you make available for journalists to do investigative pieces, and how, at the end of the day, these funds are untouched. Have you made the effort to find out why most journalists are unwilling to go into the field of investigative journalists and these monies are left untouched?
For one thing, we also understand that there is a deficit as far as the capacity to conduct investigative journalism is concerned. And so, as of now, we even have a program, an incubator program, where we have invited journalists to present their story ideas. They want to do any investigative pieces, they should let us know what it is they want to do, and we're going to camp them and provide them with the training, the technique, and also the resources to be able to do that.
All right. Now, I know you switched to the issue of ownership of media in this country, but let me quickly just come back to the studio. Saeed, I'll come back to you, but I would want to hear Gloria's take on the issue about, the investigative journalists in this country and holding institutions to account, not necessarily state institutions, but even sometimes private institutions. We have seen private investigative works done which have exposed private institutions which sought to fleece government per business activities they are sought to engage government in. Are you satisfied with the quality of investigative work we do as journalists?
Well, there are a few investigative journalists who have done excellent pieces, and we need to acknowledge them. However, we still recognize that the media journalists, media practitioners need capacity building, okay? Because day in, day out, things keep on changing. The world is progressing. We are not at a standstill. The form of conducting an investigation today may be different from how it will be conducted maybe next week. So we wish there would be more investigative journalists, but we believe, or I think that the limitation on the number of investigative journalists could also stem from the fact that they do not, or they are not confident enough. Either one, they do not have the wherewithal, or two, they are not confident enough to be able to conduct the investigative pieces. Sometimes too, I think some of the happenings in recent times tend to discourage some of these journalists.
Like what? Like what?
The threats on life. Because we have a situation of Ahmed Swale, who was murdered 2 years ago, and till date, there's no finality on that, there's no conclusion on that. We have the situation of another journalist who had to be flown out of the country for his safety, okay, for his safety and that of his family. So some of these things tend to discourage people journalists who would have otherwise loved to conduct investigative pieces. But then again, like I said, started earlier, we need capacity building, and then we need to be able to ensure the safety of journalists. Thankfully today, the Office of the Coordinating Mechanism on the Safety of Journalists was opened just at 5 o'clock today. So hopefully we are sure that issues concerning safety of journalists would be dealt with speedily for us to get closure on a whole lot of issues, and it wouldn't just be the media crying wolf, wolf, or people thinking that the media is just crying wolf, wolf when there's no wolf, but that we are being taken seriously. And it also, in my opinion, it also goes to reinforce or demonstrate, rather, the commitment by the Ministry of Information. And at this juncture, I'd like to commend the Minister of Information, because we've been working on this project for, I think, the past 2 years. And to have been able to finally commit resources and ensure that that office is operational is worth commending. And he recognizes the important role of the National Media Commission, so it's been handed over to the National Media Commission. But let me not digress. I'm hoping that
before you come back to the point you're making earlier, we've been trying to understand why we are all not branching into investigative pieces, and I'm asking myself the question: is it worth it in terms of the welfare remuneration of journalists in this country? That we all know how much, you know, colleagues in other media houses take. We all know colleagues who have worked for more than 6 months who have not been paid any salaries, and yet they are working. Is that motivation enough for journalists in this country?
That's a tough one. You know, the situation has been compounded by COVID. I know that, yes, over the years, the remuneration by the remuneration
by the operators of
media houses to journalists hasn't been that encouraging. But then again, we have various avenues where journalists or investigative journalists could access. Earlier, there was mention of the Media Foundation for West Africa having set up a fund. Aside the Media Foundation for West Africa, I know of other institutions, international organizations in Ghana that have such opportunities open. The question we need to ask is, are the journalists in a position to be able to access those funds? It could be they have very good pieces, they have very good ideas, but maybe the conditions that are required to be able to access those funds or resources are not there. They are not able to access those things. We live in a country where economic resources are limited. Okay. That doesn't mean to say that I'm making excuses for owners of media organizations not to pay the journalists well. But then again, in the situation where there are limitations, we may need to branch out. Sometimes it could be a journalist giving the idea to his employer that this kind of fund is available somewhere, because sometimes some of these funds may not be available to the journalist himself or herself to access, but maybe the media organization. And when something like that is done, it goes to support the organization and it trickles down to the journalist. So there's quite something that has to be done, but we'll see how it goes.
We'll see how it goes. We are talking about journalism in this country. We are talking about media and the freedom we enjoy as practitioners of this profession. We are trying to understand what we go through every blessed day in the line of duty. And when we come back from this commercial break, we will take a look at the ownership of media. It's become a matter of concern. We'll take a look at the content that media has been churning out. We will take a look at a very important element when it comes to media today, social media, and how, whether it's serving the public good per the theme for this year, or whether it is being a disservice. We'll talk about all of that when we come back from this break. And you're welcome back. This is Fact Sheet live on eTV, live on Facebook as well. You're welcome to the conversation if you just join us tonight. We're talking about press freedom in Ghana, the journey so far. And my guests are Gloria Hiaji, who is the Executive Secretary for the Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association, and Mohib Said, who is the Program Officer, Freedom of Expression Media Foundation for West Africa. And so is Mr. Andy Kankam, also joining us on the phone line tonight for us to have the conversation about the practice of our job as journalists and media practitioners in this country. Prior to the commercial break, we're talking about, you know, ownership of media houses in this country. Said, if you can hear me, is it a worry if politicians, for that matter, own media houses in this country? Should we be concerned?
Well, I think we should. But before I delve into that, we were discussing remuneration and morale of journalists as a result of the remuneration or lack of it. I think that that is also a real problem. We have too many media outlets that are not commercially viable. And so you have a lot of the media workers depending on the personal resources of the media owner and not what the media organization as a business is able to generate. And that is quite a worry. And it also puts journalists at risk of political capture and of corporate capture. So it's very important that media owners, people establishing media organizations, also do a very clinical market survey and be strategic, just as they would have been if they were looking to establish manufacturing enterprise.
Would you support a move in this country to ensure that, as much as the proliferation of media houses is ongoing, but there is some limit in terms of regional presence for media houses so that they can work efficiently and then get paid as well? If you have, let's say, 100 media houses or radio stations in a small space, obviously the resources would be limited, and so payment of remuneration becomes a headache.
Well, I think that would have been ideal. Unfortunately, because this will most likely be a political decision, there is the suspicion and the fear that it might not be done transparently and with the best interest of the nation at heart. It is assumed that as a business entity, anyone going to establish a media house would do their homework and make sure that they will be able to survive commercially. I think that is the assumption that we all operate under. And I suppose that if the media organization keeps making losses, at a point they will fold up, and those that have the ability to pay decent wages and sustain their staff will remain standing. The only danger is that we have a lot of politicians with very big pockets, including the national pocket itself, establishing radio stations and using resources gotten from all manner of places to sustain that radio station just to do propaganda and to do party work.
All right, but let me ask this, Said. Does the ownership of a station necessarily translate into the determination of content or editorial policy for the network?
Not automatically. There are people who establish media organizations and actually know that a professional media that serves the public interest will fail. Unfortunately, there are also too many that have established media organizations just to do politics and also to protect their other business empires, because those business empires might even be working very closely with one government or the other, and would also need to survive based on their programming in support of this government or that government, or even to ward off other media prying into their businesses, so that they also have a mouthpiece to be able to counter. Hello?
Yes, I'm here with you, Said.
Yeah, to be able to counter publications about their business operations that might not be too complimentary.
Let me quickly fuse this with the issue of content that is produced by, media practitioners, coming from the angle of ownership. So I asked the question, is it therefore the case, per your view about politicians owning media houses in the country, that there is the possibility of censorship in terms of content that consumers of these media platforms get?
This is not a possibility, it's a reality. I have watched a show on Net2 TV where Kennedy Ejapon was berating the staff. And they were actually supposed to show a video, and I think it was a technical hitch that made it impossible for them to show it. And you could not imagine the kind of insults, the rating.
But could that not be a matter of an administrator of a firm or a CEO of a firm expressing concerns about the administrative inefficiencies of his staff, not necessarily seeking to control content?
This was on live TV, and if that can be done on live TV, there is no doubt that these are not journalists who would be able to stand up against whatever the owner decides they should do or not do.
But rather, should we rather not be patting him on the back to be telling his staff about the need for them to have been prepared for with production before even coming on air to serve viewers the content?
I agree with you, but the kind of words he used against the staff was, I would say it was in bad taste, and I don't think it is good for the morale and the image of his staff.
So, I ask again, is there censorship in the practice of journalism in the country from the Media Foundation for West Africa's point of view?
Censorship? As far as government is concerned, there is no evidence of censorship, but there is censorship from media owners, and there is self-censorship by media organizations and journalists who are beholden to certain people and certain business interests.
I like the points you made about self-censorship, and I think that that's one very important point that we need to focus on, because it all boils down to editorial policy. We might sit here and, we might be discussing an issue to do with Galamsey. If the editorial policy says this won't, let's say, government, and so we are not discussing Galamsey, the production team cannot discuss Galamsey. And so, as much as, they would produce a show that may focus on press freedom that evening for viewers to get content on press freedom, the plan of the production team would have been to highlight They're using the galamsey industry or the mining industry, but some form of censorship would have happened as much as content would have been given that evening. In that respect, Said, I think you have a point there.
Yeah, I agree with you, because let's take, for example, if the media owner is known to be involved in galamsey, it is not very likely that he will encourage a discussion on galamsey that would condemn the fact.
All right, Said, I thank you for making time to join me tonight on the show. Unfortunately, time is really, really fast spent, and so, Gloria, I'll come to you on the point about censorship before we run up the discussion with Mr. Andy Kankam's thoughts on all that we've been talking about. So, if there is censorship, if we admit, even as we sit here having this conversation, I can bet you are self-censoring. In terms of your choice of words, in terms of what you say, in terms of the carefulness with which you speak about certain issues. In that respect, are you really free?
Well, I wouldn't consider it so much as me self-censoring, but just to make sure that I put out the right message that makes sense, that is relatable, and that will not touch on sensibilities. That is what always guides my speech. But I do get the point that sometimes there's self-censorship or even censorship, indirect censorship in some of the work the media does. It could stem from maybe a paymaster, and he made mention of maybe a media owner engaging in galamsey. I do not believe that that media owner would come out with the situation we have with galamsey now. I do not believe that the media owner would come out and publicly declare that he or she is engaged in galamsey, considering the public outcry that is going on about galamsey. Rather, there could be some indirect form of censorship whereby his employees could be asked to tone down a bit. They could talk about the galamsey issue, but instead of being very vociferous about it, he would ask them to tone down a bit. Okay. And then, well, it could be good or bad. Censorship could be, usually when we talk about censorship, we look at the negative aspect of it. But I would like to find a little good in the word censorship, as in it helping us to be decorous in our utterances and making sure that we do not infringe on the rights that have been given to us. Yeah.
All right, let me leave you for a minute and go back to the phone lines and speak to a practitioner of our business, and that's in the print space. Mr. Andy Kankam joins us sometimes, very bold, headlines on his front page, and you look at it and you say, trouble will come. Mr. Kankam, it's good to have you on the show, sir.
Good evening.
Is your job dangerous?
It depends on how you look at it, and good evening to your cherished listeners and viewers. It depends on how you look at it and you assess what we are doing. To be dangerous when you know that you are churning out lies and engage in blackmail and not telling people the truth. That is where you have something to worry about. But if you know that what you are saying is the gospel truth, you have evidence that will help in nation building. I mean, to hell with whatever somebody says. You don't care whose source is God. Even God will protect you. But when it is obvious that you are not speaking the truth, you are engaged in pure blackmail and unnecessary sensationalism, that is where you have something to worry about. Just like yourself, very objective. I think that you have some huge following and people always sing your praises. I mean, even that is enough. Security. So it depends on the way you look at it. It depends on the way you look at it.
But even the truth sometimes cuts very deep, more than the effect a lie would have had, and therefore would earn you some enemies who may threaten you. Do you get threatened at times in the line of duty?
Yes, as for threat, even last month, it was all over threat that I was receiving from some party people for speaking my mind, for speaking the truth. But then again, I spoke on a wide range of a couple of networks, and I told them that, listen, the God that I serve will always protect me. Once it's the truth, one day I'll get vindicated. And Sammy, we are all hearing what is happening. Our position is what is being said today. When we said that the NDC failed to collate the results, and people were of the view that what I said was not the truth, or I was lying, or I was trying to destroy the chances of the party going to court with evidence that they have gathered. At the end of the day, what happened? When they were asked to produce spreadsheet, they ended up putting before the court spreadsheet. So how can you advance your case with spreadsheet?
All right, but
the truth will always triumph.
Yes, but to a very crucial point about editorial policy, what influences your decision as to what should be a banner headline and what shouldn't be, considering that we know that there is selectivity and subjectivity in the line of our work?
Sorry, for me, it's about Ghanaians. I've always said that Ghanaians are my constituents, and I will always prioritize the needs of Ghanaians over any other thing. I'm in people's parochial interest. I will not engage in those sycophantic praises. So if I have to bring to the attention of government for appropriate action to be taken, I will do so. A case in point was when I also drew your attention to the fact that, listen, some people somewhere find it difficult to get access to potable water. 21st century, SDG goal 6. We are failed woefully. When Chi District and what have you, Toulon District, where people are competing with animals for potable water or water to drink, I think that will be my priority, attracting the banner headline so that government will do something about it. It's all about catching the attention of government, because government is confronted with a myriad of issues to address.
All right.
So it depends on how the issues you bring to the fore or to the banner that will gain the currency and eventually get the government to act. So I will not engage in propagating somebody's parochial interest
but quickly,
over that of the ordinary Ghanaian who is finding it difficult to pull body and soul together.
All right, our time is fast spent. Just final question. Does your job pay?
Yeah, it does, because, listen, when you know you are doing the right thing, there is this, let me say, this aura around you. You see that, listen, you are doing the right thing and people applaud you for that. Please, what is in terms of payment, perhaps you are talking about monetary terms or whatever, but it's more refreshing when people applaud you for a good job done. For me, money cannot be used to. Money is not an equivalent. It's not an equivalent. All is that you must be objective in whatever you are doing. Even when you have a story and think that you are cocksure of the evidence available or the document available to you, please, no, it is not obligatory, but to make you a professional listen, you reach out to the other side to listen to them. I mean, calling the other party involved in a story doesn't mean that you are going to drop the story.
All right.
That makes you a professional media practitioner. So, Sammy, all is about the truth. When you speak the truth, majority of Ghanaians will support you. And even when the bad ones or people are plotting evil about you, eventually God will use one of his own to redeem you.
Mr. Kankam, I'm grateful you made time to join us tonight on Fact Sheet and for giving us the personal perspective to the conversation. I mean, personifying the conversation for us this evening. Gloria, I'll give you the last bite. We usually leave out social media. We don't pay attention to social media. Our laws really doesn't capture social media, but that's where a lot of the damage happens. Should we begin to have a conversation about social media and formulating laws?
That's a very tricky area to go into, because I know that I may be wrong, but I know that all over the world, social media is not regulated. They haven't been able to find an appropriate means to regulate social media. But I think we should, in Ghana, we should just be guided by the provisions in the 1992 Constitution, the Chapter 12. Like I stated earlier, there have been freedoms granted, but those freedoms are subject to certain conditions. So we need to use that to guide our practice and everything. The social media aspect, in fact, social media has come to do a lot of advantages, although sometimes there are some people who engage in excesses. A lot of advantages, as in those who hitherto would not have had the opportunity to express their views are able to use social media very conveniently, go on Facebook, go on Twitter. Even some media houses have WhatsApp numbers, okay, that people are able to send opinions, questions, messages on to help in the discourse, enrich the discourse. Earlier, there was talk about the plurality of media organizations in Ghana. The 1992 Constitution, as it was crafted by the framers of the Constitution, looked at certain things that had happened in the country and felt the media...
I am being prompted that
okay.
We are eating into the other show's time, and I'm sure we may have to extend the conversation maybe next week and then look at a bit about social media. But Gloria, I'm grateful that you made time to join me tonight on Fact Sheet. Mr. Kankam, I'm grateful that you joined us tonight via phone to help with the discourse. And so would I say thank you to Mr. Mohib Said, who is Program Officer for the Freedom of Expression Media Foundation for West Africa. Gloria Haji is the Executive Secretary for the Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association. Mr. Kankam is the editor for the Informer newspaper. My name is Samuel. On behalf of the production team, I thank you for being a part of the show tonight. A repeat broadcast of the show will be live on eTV at 10 a.m. tomorrow. Good night.